Hey, what's going on, everybody? You're watching Exposure. You're watching CanCon Locals. You're with Senator Doug Mastriano. You are live. Well, it's not really live. We're pre-recording this, but we're going to have a good time with the senator here for just a second. Got to introduce my co-host here, Mr. Brian CanCon. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you, brother?
Dude, it's a great day to be a patriot, man. I'm telling you, there is so much happening right now in this country, in this world. We're going to get into all that. We're going to talk about a lot of it tonight with respect to the senator's time, of course. We don't want to take you over too far, but man, there's so much happening right now. It's hard to digest everything, and I think that's the point. But we're going to take it one notch at a time and make the Constitution first and foremost. So, cancon.locals.com is where you can find my boy. He's doing everything election integrity. He's doing COVID. He's doing, man, you're doing so much good work over there, man. Talk about your channel for just a second.
I mean, there's not really much to say about it, just most people that know the two of us know that we work together. We do a lot of thorough work, and when I see the mainstream media talking about some of the things I was talking about 2 and 3 weeks ago, the One America 40%, it was on Tucker Carlson last night, and I was like, whoa, hold on, I was talking about that 3 weeks ago. But anyways, I'm just privileged to be here with Colonel Mastriano. Senator Mastriano, as a military guy, I always take the military rank over the political rank. So, Colonel, it's an honor to be here with you tonight.
Thank you. What was your what branch of service were you with?
I was an infantryman in the Marine Corps.
Wow. Thank you for your service. Semper Fi, brother.
Absolutely. Semper Fi.
Cool. And thank you for yours as well, Colonel. It's been a long time. I know there's been a lot of conversation about us having you on, and we talked to your former chief of staff, like we were mentioning off air just a couple weeks ago. But to have you on is pretty special, especially during such a wonderful time of you running for governor. So thanks for spending some time with us tonight.
I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate you guys speaking truth to power. That's an old Quaker saying. When people like Quakers are in a weak position, they boldly speak the truth to power, and that's what we're doing. We're in a weak position. The media is against us. The political arms are against us here. It seems weak, but we do believe greater is He that's in us and He that's in the world.
Amen. Colonel, listen, this not only is it the media that's against us, and I'm just going to start off with this because this is something that's been bothering me ever since I saw this yesterday. The Department of Homeland Security, I don't know if you've seen this yet or not, but they just announced a summary on terrorism and the threat to the U.S. homeland because of this. I'm going to go through this, not entirely, but this was put out yesterday, basically saying the domestic terrorism threat that we have in this country is the number one factor to who we are as a country. And my jaw dropped when I saw this. So the opening line of this is the United States remains in a heightened threat environment fueled by several factors, including an online environment filled with false or misleading narratives and conspiracy theories and other forms of mis, dis, and malinformation, which they actually acronym. They've used that term enough to acronym it MDM, mis, dis, and malinformation, introduced and or amplified by foreign and domestic threat actors. Now, here's where it gets crazy. The first line of their key factors contributing is the proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in our government institutions. Their first one, Senator, is, for example, there is widespread online proliferation of false or misleading narratives regarding unsubstantiated widespread election fraud and COVID-19. The two most hot button topics that everybody gets censored for. Everybody says you can't talk about that in the mainstream. That is the number one issue that they have as their key factors on the Department of Homeland Security's government website. And we saw this on January 20th when then President inaugurated Biden said, oh, by the way, the number one threat facing our country is domestic terrorism. Why are the people of the greatest nation in the world fighting their own government right now, Senator?
Well, and also don't forget parents attending school board meetings are also a threat to our democracy. By the way, we're a republic. I don't know why the Democrats don't understand that. And to the republic, it's not to the democracy for which it stands.
I am so grateful you said that. Go ahead. That is one of my biggest pet peeves of all time is when they say you're ruining the democratic process. Well, we're not a democracy, so
Yeah,
Carry on. I'm
thank you.
sorry, Colonel.
It's a big distinction. So I'm a senator. I represent 250,000 people, 260,000 people in my district. That's a republic. Of course, a democracy is. This might be a little coarse, but it's mob rule. It's the rule of the majority, and yeah, Democrats might want us to become a democracy so they can have these fantasies and incriminations and condemnations about citizens going to school board meetings who want transparency, who want the kids to be safe in school, who don't want people born one gender pretending to be another gender going into the bathroom and assaulting little girls and young ladies, and those aren't terrorists. And I'm sick of this, and they're trying to oppress us. This 2021, we got to hear for a full year of all this narrative from the media, these lies, putting down. If you went to Washington D.C. in January of 2021 and you did nothing wrong, you're exercising your First Amendment right. You're allowed to protest and peacefully. It's funny though how it works when the shoe's on the other foot. We could have violence in Portland and Seattle and in Minneapolis, and literally have a CNN reporter in Minneapolis with a block on fire, and it's mostly peaceful. No, it's not. Either it is or it isn't. We're at this level here because we've allowed our freedoms to be stripped away in many states, even some Republican states. And we've allowed, when the shutdown happened 2 years ago, this March, everyone, buckled up. We don't know if it was going to be Spanish flu. I don't know anyone who didn't take it serious for the first 2 weeks to flatten the curve. But then when, like my governor, Governor Wolf, and never before was a governor more appropriately named, by the way, he kept on moving the goalposts. And now we're on 500 days of flattening the curve here. But then there was a lack of Republican leadership. Democrats were ruling the roost and terrorizing us with fear and with conspiracy theories. We would ask questions and we'd be attacked. I hosted many rallies over the past 2 years, largely in protesting of the trampling of our freedoms in the name of COVID. And the media consistently covered my events, and we'd have thousands there. And of course, liberal math in the media. If we have thousands at events, they say hundreds. If we have hundreds, they say dozens. But it's the opposite for their people. I was like, okay. And sure, I had the Capitol Police in Harrisburg, great people. And we had one rally. He goes, man, I counted 7,000 people. And of course, the media said hundreds showed up. I'm like, what? We had people down the block. But Mastriano held a rally, a very irresponsible super spreader event, reckless, endangered, very few masks, no social distancing. This is how bad it was. So I had this thing, where is Wolf? He came out 2 marches ago, and I'm probably talking too long here, but he came out 2 marches ago, said, all hands on deck, we're in a crisis. And then he stopped coming to work. And so I'd go to his office 55 times, where's Wolf, banging on the door, and he's not there. And he finally made an appearance like the June after his shutdown, and he had like this awful burn on his bald head. And I empathize with him since I'm also bald. I'm like, is that a Philadelphia burn, or have you been in Florida or Hawaii? I don't know. But, for a while there, I was looking for his picture, like on the side of a milk carton. Have you seen this man? So I'm glad he was okay. But check this out. He came out of hiding, probably in the basement with Biden somewhere. And he said, okay, we're going to move. We had like these color phases, green, yellow, and red phase. And red is like really shut down a lot. And yellow is kind of shut down for counties. He goes, Dauphin County, that's in Harrisburg, the capital. He comes out like the king of the Susquehanna River. The king doth decreeth that Susquehanna, that Dauphin County shall move to the yellow phase, and you shall gather in groups of 25 or less. But if 26 cometh, he shall die by COVID. And so I'm like thinking, that's messed up. And literally the next day, he goes to a BLM rally with thousands of people. And I'm like, where COVID's going to pass over you because this is a state-approved event. You can't make this crap up. And the media didn't care. They asked him. He's like, oh, it may have seemed inconsistent, but this is, we have the right to exercise our First Amendment freedoms. Yeah, they do. And it's a very important cause that I believe in. And they gave him a pass. But for me, they're crapping on me and my people. And it's like, stop it. So that's why there's a problem in the conflict and hostility between Democrat leaders at the federal and state level, and then us, the people just want to be left the heck alone.
Colonel, let me ask you, over the last few days, we've just seen now where they've come out in a lot of these Democrat strongholds, especially up in the Northeast, these states are now saying that they're going to do away with the mask mandates for school children, which is completely and totally mind-boggling to me because it goes against the same science that these Democrats have been following for the last 2 years. And now all of a sudden it's like we're up against an election year I don't know what that was. We're up against an election year, 2022, and all of a sudden, the science we can kind of get around the science a little bit. Are you seeing that same thing in Pennsylvania?
Yes and no. We're a bit conflicted because this is Wolf's last term, so he doesn't care. But check this. So the match should have come off 2 years ago. So this past August, we had hearings, and under oath, I had the acting Secretary of Health, Beam, and she was a bad act, by the way, terrible act. And I had the Secretary of Education in the room there under oath. And so if I'm a look, in the Marine Corps and the Army, any of the services, if you're given an assignment, you need to be the master of that. You need to be the boss of it. And if you're not, we're going to find someone else better than you. So I don't play these, Ted Cruz, I respect him. I think he said some stupid things recently, though. But I don't play that game. I'm not an attorney. I'm a colonel in the Army, and I go right to it. I just ask the questions, and it's no setup. It's not a game. And I'm like, okay, acting Secretary of Health Beam, how many children 18 and under have died in Pennsylvania from COVID? She didn't know. And every day she issues a report, some staffer does it, and it said 0. And a couple minutes later, a staffer, sends her a text, and she goes 15, which was wrong, but okay, I'll go with it. And every death is tragic. I'm not downplaying anything. So I go, Secretary of Education, how many children do we have in school in Pennsylvania? I mean, a basic piece of information. He had no clue how many kids in school we have in Pennsylvania. The Secretary of Education of the state. And a few minutes later, one of his staffers says 1.3 million. Well, he was wrong. I looked it up. NEA, National Education Association, said 1.7 million. But okay. So for 15 out of 1.7 million, we're going to shut down the schools, mask up your kids, maybe even give them a jab. And that for 0.00008% of the population, we're going to do that. I have more kids dying every year in Pennsylvania. Well, we as a state from accidents, car accidents, from the flu, and other causes here. Now from suicide because of the shutdown here. Shame on the governor for playing games with the lives of our kids. And and at the same time, you go to schools, you see school boards and that are heavy, the ones that are for masking and all this other crap here. You'll see them out at parties not masked up. So it literally is theatrics in a game for them. It's about control. It's not about their public safety or the health.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm so glad you brought that up. And going back to the first point that you made about them gaslighting your campaign, saying, "Oh, he's causing a super spreader," and making it so. And this is a real issue, Senator. This is now something that the American people have, I believe, I think it's unsubstantiated, but it's a fear. It's a fear of coming out against the misinformation that they are deeming misinformation as a projection onto their political opponent, which is us, the conservatives, the constitutional people who, like you said, just want to be left alone. I don't think those days are here. And if they're not, if they're going to be here in a little while, I think it's going to take a long while, because we are now in a position of fight mode. We have to come back and get this country back in a certain way. And what I wanted to play for you, I want to play this video. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but it really speaks to the point. And I kind of want you to address this, because I think the reason I brought up the DHS information right off the bat was because I think that misinformation campaign is so strong from them, because they have the bullhorn of the mainstream media, right? Mm-hmm. But they try to control the narrative. It's slipping from them because we've seen CNN's numbers go into the toilet, and people like Brian and myself are now becoming more prominent because we have the opportunity to speak directly to the source of people like you. But I want to play this for you and kind of get your reaction on what we can do as a country, and specifically in Pennsylvania, about misinformation and disinformation.
News. We are real news.
Much of the dossier has been corroborated. Some rioters were planning to murder lawmakers.
What does Putin have on Trump? Has Trump been compromised?
That Kavanaugh aided and abetted in the commission of a gang rape.
But it does look like that young man to me is taunting the Native American Vietnam vet, and he's in his face.
When you start whipping people and you want to split hairs between reins and whips.
There is no evidence of any wrongdoing by either Joe or Hunter Biden.
Looking ahead to 2020, one reason why I'm taking you seriously as a contender is because of your presence on cable news.
A widely held conspiracy theory that the coronavirus was created in a Chinese laboratory.
Dr. Fauci, thank you for keeping it straight. Thank you for fighting the good fight.
We know the science. We know that masks work.
This is now a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Senator, this goes on and on. And then this is a 4-minute clip. I played a minute and a half for you. Why, who is controlling the information, and why are they deeming the information they don't want out there disinformation or misinformation? Because it's causing a lot of fear in this country.
To shut us up, because on our side here, we're led by sheep. We're a bunch of lions led by sheep. So this is a little bit off topic, and if I don't hit it on the head, please bring it back up, because I do answer the questions. But the Democrat Legislative Campaign Committee put out a very honest piece via Politico this past November, and they did a poll. They want to see, who their guy in Pennsylvania is going to face for the gubernatorial race, and I was ahead, of course, in the poll, and they were appalled by that, and they were very honest. So the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee is a nationwide arm of the part of the DNC, Democrat National Committee. They said they blacklisted last year 21 Republicans for political destruction, and I was number one on their list. And I was wondering why I was being hit by the New Yorker, or the New York Times, the Washington Post. Me, a state senator, I represent a little corner of the state, Gettysburg and Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. And they said we viewed Mastriano as the biggest threat to their guy, our Attorney General Shapiro, who's the heir apparent to Wolf for governor. And they laid into me so hard that they thought that I would be hit so hard and bloody that I would resign in shame, because I couldn't handle the heat. And they said, we did this poll, and we were shocked to see although we hit him with our best shot, kind of like that song from the 80s, right? Pat Benatar. They hit me at the best shot, and my negatives were single digit. And they said, all we did is make him more popular. And in fact, the senior Democrat senator said, all we did with this is give Mastriano more street cred. They thought foolishly that they're going to drive, this old soldier who faced Ivan on the Iron Curtain during the Cold War in the 80s, who fought the Iraqi Republican Guards in the first Gulf War, served 3 tours. Really? And because here's the thing that's, look, I'm not a hero. I served with heroes. That's a fact. Like Teddy Daniels, for instance, he's running for lieutenant governor. My motive for running for office was that as I was retiring from the Army as a colonel, I'm ashamed to say this, but I was going to ride off into the sunset after 30 years. I'm a disabled vet. Most of us get banged up and all that stuff we do. I was going to ride off in the sunset with a sweet 6-figure job and just kind of disappear, fade away, like MacArthur said. But as I was taking stock of my 3 decades of service, I was heartbroken that I was handing off the country to my son's generation in pretty bad shape. And as I was complaining about that, I was on a radio station with this young 24-year-old guy, and we were going to talk about Russia. I was in my uniform, last interview uniform, and he said, well, Colonel, what are you going to do about it? And I was like, ouch. So the reason why the media gets away with this crap is because Republicans, they get shot at, metaphorically speaking, by the media and the Democrats, and they run for the hills.
Right.
And I got to say, there was only a handful of us that stood up throughout the shutdown over the past 2 years, and then standing with our medical workers and standing with small business, everyone standing for the students and special needs kids that were left alone, standing for voter integrity, and people, and how many are still out there standing? And now that we have a governor's race, and it really sickens me. There's like 15, 20, I don't know. There's a lot running for governor in Pennsylvania. All these guys crawl out of the foxhole when the fighting's over, and they stand up there, after, I took these shots, and, I promise, I will, I pledge. And I'm like, where the hell have you been when I needed you for the past 2 years? You could have done something for your people. Yep. If those people, and I don't care if they're in politics or not, because I know a lot of grassroots people who aren't in politics, and they had, free PA movement, the reopen business movement in Pennsylvania, the medical freedom movement, all led by non-politicians in my state, and they have 100,000 followers each. If they didn't do anything when you needed them, they ain't going to do nothing when they're governor. And it's because talk is cheap. As to why the media gets away with this, because we have a lot of weak people on our side.
Well, and not only that, but they're trying to take control of it. And I don't know if you know this, or I wanted to ask you this directly. I heard today that you got your Facebook page taken away, your personal Facebook page taken away. Is this true?
Yeah, it is true. So last night, my wife does a weekly devotional and prayer time on a biker's page here in Pennsylvania, and I was sharing it around. And Facebook limits how much you can share to like 50. I went over 50, and they use that as a pretense to shut down my personal page. What's the so what? That means I had no access to my campaign page, which has just about 100,000 followers, or my Senate page, which has 202,000 followers. And that locked me out. Now, thankfully, I found a workaround, but it just shows you how much power they have. And so you played that clip there, and everything you heard there, we were on the opposite side of them the past 2 years. And now, guess what? We were right. We were right all along. And, you know, I'd like to have an apology from the Democrats and from social media platforms for those fake fact checkers. You know, that 15-year-old kid with freckles there is telling me with a PhD that I don't know what the hell I'm talking about here. I'd like to have an apology. And we were right. We have to stay the course. It says in Galatians 6:9, grow not weary doing good, because in due time you reap your harvest. It's not easy, this fight. We have to persevere, and in due time we'll win, but we have to stay the course.
Yeah, that's such a great, what a leadership tone, because that, I think that is what a lot of people are seeking. I think a lot of people were, you know, they latched on to specific individuals, whether it was presidential and Donald Trump, whether it was specific governors like Ron DeSantis, or people like Kristi Noem. You know, now we're looking to grassroots people like Doug Mastriano and Carrie Lake down in Arizona, and Candace Taylor down in Georgia, and specific people around the country. And I mean, they are afraid of people like us. They are afraid of candidates like you, Senator Mastriano, because you even go to, and I'm gonna do this in live time. You even go to DougMastriano.com. Do you know what comes up when you type in DougMastriano.com?
Josh Shapiro.
Yes, it does. It goes to Josh Shapiro for governor. Are you kidding me? And a donation page at that.
Oh, that guy just gives me the creeps, man.
I mean, is this
Joe
like
Biden will win if every legal vote is counted? If every vote is counted, Joe Biden will win.
What did you think when you heard him say that, Senator?
Yeah, and imagine a Republican attorney general saying that the day before the election. Is like, what is this, rigged? I mean, we wouldn't get away with it, but of course he gets a free pass because he's on their side, and so they act as an arm of the Democrat Party. You know, hats off to him for buying that domain, but my name is too hard for a lot of people to spell, so it's DougForGov.com. So if you want to find me, it's Doug for Gov, number 4. So
there you go. Yeah.
Colonel, on that note, going back to Shapiro, one of the big things that we saw in the election back early in 2021 was, William Barr says nothing happened. Then we have the U.S. attorney in Pennsylvania. His name is escaping me off the top of my head. William something or other. I'm not sure his name.
Yeah, McSwain.
Yeah, McSwain. There you go. McSwain, a Marine. And I'm actually really upset about this, but he came out and said, well, we had these cases and AG Barr told me, don't take these cases, pass them on to Shapiro, who's the man that was saying right before the election that if everything is counted, if every vote is counted, Donald Trump will not win. And now McSwain he's throwing his hat into a race in Pennsylvania, isn't he?
Yeah, sadly, he's running for governor, and I'm really disappointed and not happy with him, because you think about this, and so he's a competitor. Anything I'm saying now has nothing to do with the race right now. Let's freeze in time, go back to November 2020. It's November 25th, 2020. I hold a Gettysburg hearing. All the other states are stopping their endeavor for an audit. Everyone's quitting, and all eyes were on Pennsylvania. Will Pennsylvania do anything? And so the day before Thanksgiving, I hold a hearing. And it blows the lid off of it. And by the way, baseless claims, that's a bunch of bullcrap. I reviewed this past November on the 1-year anniversary, give or take a day, my findings that I filed for my hearing. And the liberal media has not disproven anything. As we got more data, of course, the data, my findings need to be refined a bit, because what we didn't know in that time came out a few months later. But nothing was baseless. They did not disprove any of the 13 witnesses I have either. I mean, it's just a little tagline to get people just to move on. Kind of like, Russia influenced and altered the election in 2016. For 3 years, we heard that, and that was all a lie. That was baseless. What we have here is unanswered questions about what happened. So I had the hearing. We have all these affidavits. We have the findings. And then this federal district attorney, McSwain, he has an opportunity now. He has evidence. And had he, on the heels of my hearing, done something in federal court, it would have changed everything. I think we would have gotten to the bottom of this here in Pennsylvania. But because he lacked the courage, that he lacked the moral courage to do that, it kind of fizzled. Because of course the Republican leadership, one person individual, specifically the President Pro Tem in the Senate, stood in the way and kind of blocked all the progress on this here. But as far as his letter to Trump, which was released, Donald Trump, I was a Marine and I followed orders. What a lame, stupid thing to say. Bill Barr was not in his chain of command, if I could use a military term. He's a federal attorney acting independently, and he lacked the courage to do the job at the time here. And I don't know what to say about that. If people can't do the right thing when they're given the opportunity that could have really made a difference in voting integrity in Pennsylvania here, they're not going to do it as governor. It says in the Proverbs that a zebra can't change its stripes or a leopard's its spots. You are who you are.
I saw that because when I saw that he was a Marine, and this has nothing to do with me kind of getting behind your campaign here, but this was way back when that letter first came out, and I said, as a Marine, I'm very upset with this guy because you had an obligation, to deny that order. That as a Marine, if you're given an unlawful order,
yes,
you deny that. You deny that order, and in this case. Now you could say, well, most of the stuff might have been in state, which in that case it would be Shapiro to prosecute or to prosecute or whatever. But we're also looking at, we had cases of reports of post office trucks coming from New Jersey and New York into Pennsylvania, and this was stuff that I'm sure came across his desk. And did that get passed off? Because that is federal, and that is something that he should have investigated.
Yeah, isn't that a felony at the federal level, crossing the state lines with ballots? And so we had Jesse Morgan with his truck in New York pick up a load of ballots. He didn't know it at the time, and they directed him to Harrisburg. And that's when he was poking around the truck and saw that there was ballots in there. And then he was told to drop his trailer in Lancaster. And then that's the last we heard of it. And I know we have trackers on these trucks here. It's strange how nothing comes out. And so there was
logbooks, driver's logs.
Yes, thank you. And Jesse's funny because he's like, that was my favorite trailer. It had the smoothest ride. I wanted my trailer back, kind of thing. Where is it? So we have all these unanswered questions. And so the left and the media has actually exacerbated this whole thing here by poo-pooing and discounting our concerns. There are real concerns of shenanigans and fraud in Pennsylvania that have not been addressed. And, just moving on. Hey, Doug, I got and politicians, all they really care about is money and reelection. And I got a reelection, and this doesn't play well in my district. You shouldn't push this so hard. I thought you took an oath in that Constitution to uphold both the state Constitution, and federal Constitution. This is not about your reelection campaign. It's about doing your job. Just as that attorney, in Philadelphia should have done his job. And that, you're right, that was not a lawful order because anyway, Bill Barr's not in his chain of command. Why did he even ask him? He's given that position there to do the right thing and to uphold the law.
Well, and I'm glad you went. I'm glad you're talking about this because this is something we haven't heard a whole lot from you publicly yet, Senator. Because once you made that video on August 19th, talking about the powers that be, and I want to play that video for people. I'm not trying to stick, I'm not trying to put salt in the wound or turn the knife at all, but I do want to give people a context of the video that you put out there. I want to ask you about the context leading up to the video. And then the circumstances that happened after. So everybody kind of take a look at this. And this is a recap of what happened back in August.
And so our cause is weakened and diminished. And so try to get this forensic investigation going. And as you know, I issued the letters. I had the authority to do that. And had it set up to have a voting session of the committee several weeks ago, in fact. And the powers that be made sure that didn't happen. There are ways. I'm not going to go over that. They're not appropriate right now anyway.
I'm going to cut in right there. Are they appropriate now, Senator? Yeah. Are we able to talk about that?
Yeah, I did talk about it the next day on Steve Bannon's show. And
yes. But since then, it hasn't really been made public at all.
Yeah. So, I hold my hearing. The Senate goes out of session. It goes out of session every 2 years in Pennsylvania at 11 p.m. on 30 November. And we're not back in session until early January. And so I'm rushing, with my colleagues in the House to try to get an emergency resolution. And of course, the Senate leadership, we can't do that. They didn't even try. We should have just convened, like in Valley Forge. And if the court said it was, illegal or whatever, then it wouldn't have mattered anyway. But, and they go home on their breaks for a month kind of thing. So we get back in session in January and, we're told, hey, we're going to hold hearings in the House and Senate. Doug, wait, and we'll have hearings. We'll file a report, I'm like, okay. And the hearings drag on, and the House hearings are pretty good. Actually, they do find some issues. The Senate ones aren't as thorough as they needed to be. And then a report comes out in May, and they're nothing burgers. You know, the House report was okay. The Senate one really didn't give us anything. It was, you know, in collaboration with the Democrats. It was, you know, kind of a mediocre report, just kind of like bland. And so I'm like, we still don't have any answers. The ballots will be destroyed in 22 months, you know, from election day. We're down to like 6 months before they're going to be burned or tossed or shredded, whatever they do with them. And I'm sure the trucks will be, you know, warmed up, ready to go that day, you know, kind of thing. And so I go to Arizona. You know, I see what Arizona's doing. I see Wendy Rogers, who's doing fantastic work down there. Senator Wendy Rogers and you know, Mark Fincham. There's like a line of heroes down there. And I'm like, wow. We get a tour, and I see what they're doing. It's transparent, it's thorough, it's scientific. You know, they could tell if a ballot was photocopied, and I believe many of the fraudulent ballots in Pennsylvania are probably photocopies because our Supreme Court added 3 days for ballots to come in. That's not constitutional, by the way. And I come back and I force the hand of the Senate leadership, Senator Corman mostly. I had a committee, and using my committee, I issue letters to 3 counties, telling Philadelphia County, Democrat county, obviously, Tioga County, very Republican, and York County, Republican county in my district, that we're going to do a full forensic investigation, Arizona style. And I had to give them, you know, adequate time to reply, even if I knew they all want subpoenas. But, you know, legally you have to give, otherwise the judge will say that wasn't enough time and, you know, move on, Mastriano. So I gave them 3 weeks, and it's time to issue the subpoenas, August 7th. I put together a voting meeting in person over the summer. You know, a lot of folks are traveling, so I'm working with the committee trying to get everyone assembled. We have to vote in person. And Senator Corman, the president pro tem of the Senate, is like, he has all these issues. You know, and we had all these meetings with him and his staff. I in good faith worked with the Senate leadership in good faith. I was in NATO for 4 years, and which took off kind of my leadership edge in the Army and like in the Marine Corps as well. You had this edge about you, but when you're working in a multinational environment, you have to back it up a little bit, you know, and a little bit more give and take with the French and the Belgians, Germans, you know, et cetera. And so I figured I was able to successfully work with the French over in Afghanistan and in NATO and 18 other countries as well, that I'd be able to make it happen. And so there's a lot of give and take, mostly me giving. So I postponed my first meeting, and then I rescheduled the meeting, and then I come to find out that we're about to meet. I'm about to sunshine it. We have a law in Pennsylvania. You have to announce 24 hours before. I'm about to sunshine the meeting. And before I can do that, I'm hearing from my Republican colleagues saying, "Did you cancel the meeting on Friday?" I'm like, "No." They said, "Well, Senator Corman called us up and told us it's canceled." And so I'm trying to reach him, and you know, he texts me, "I'm not talking to you." You know, he's not taking up my calls. "I'm mad at you." And I'm like, okay, that's an awful leadership style here. So come to find out, he called my colleagues behind my back, didn't have the courtesy. All he had to do is say, "Doug, you know, here's some concerns I need to address before we move forward," or whatever. He doesn't want to do this. And so canceled the meeting behind my back and locks me out of a hearing room as well. I don't have, because, you know, leadership controls the hearings room as well. So that video came out when I realized that it was not going to happen in Pennsylvania. And it's you know, despite what anyone might say, it's not going to happen in Pennsylvania. Machines were subpoenaed after I lost my committee and lost my staff. You know, Tony DeGillespie being one of them, of course, my chief of staff that I fought in Iraq for back 31 years ago in Desert Storm. But the ballots have never been subpoenaed. Any forensic investigation begins and ends for an election with ballots. And I think the Democrats will successfully run out the clock. And unless a judge steps in and says, "No, don't destroy those. We need to get to the," I don't think it's going to happen, though. And that's the Republicans doing that to Republicans. What would you say to the detractors that might come against you, whether it's on the conservative side or even the Democratic side, that there wasn't any force back from you on your end, being that you got taken out of your committee chairmanship and you lost your staff? They said maybe you rode off into the sunset and decided not to address this any further. What would you say to the detractors that may come against your point of view on that respect? I say that they're ridiculous dopes and don't know what they're talking about. You know, I've always been consistent in my position and what I stand for here, and I'm still demanding that we get something done here. It's easy for people to shoot their mouths off. They haven't lifted a finger to do anything. And then I'll ask those detractors, did you contact Jake Corman? Did you get on his counter and visit him? Did you share your concerns with him? What have you done? Talk is cheap. If you're going to sit in your chair on your fat duff and criticize one of the only guys fighting for you for the past 2 years, I can't do nothing else for you, because obviously you're just a miserable curmudgeon, or probably a rhino at heart as well. If you think you can do it better, then step up and help me out here a little bit. And, it's been a lonely battle. I haven't been alone, but I'm no martyr either. We're going to win. So the recourse is to run for governor. And so we're going to win. We're going to win overwhelmingly the primary. We are going to win the general election here. And the governor of Pennsylvania actually appoints the Secretary of State. And I have an amazing, solid plan, which I'm not going to share here, because the other clowns who don't have any original thought here will take all that and pretend it's their, concept of operations. I have a Secretary of State already picked out who is like one of the nation's leading voices on election reform. This individual here, knows the nuts and bolts of about 6 different states for election reform. There's things as governor I can do here to instantly affect change. Obviously, we'll send teams down to these counties, all 67 counties, and make sure they clean up the books. We know for sure, fact, about 8,000 dead voted in the 2020 presidential election. Those should have been off the books. And on top of all that, for the detractors here, if they bother to get off their gluteus maximus and actually look at what I'm doing in the Senate, I have legislation together with Senator Judy Ward on requiring a voter ID as a constitutional amendment, so it can't be vetoed by the wolf. Empowering and increasing the penalties for poll watchers. If you deprive them from getting in, like we saw in Philadelphia with that little attorney, had his little badge, and that giant man comes out and kind of pushes him out. I mean, people will go to jail and pay fines. We have ending this wild, wild west in Pennsylvania for compromised election by tightening up all the things that went wrong. For instance, what went wrong in Pennsylvania? And people who don't know what they're talking about here want to blame this on the Republicans. And it's sometimes Republicans rightly deserve it. What went wrong with the election is Pennsylvania Supreme Court rewrote election law. They added 3 days to the election. They took away the requirement for a postal mark, proving it was actually mailed before the end of the election. And so I knew that meant there's going to be somebody, potentially making photocopy. How many votes are we short back there? Pressing the button. They took away the requirement for a matching signature. So all you had to do is fill in a ballot, circle Joe Biden and Shapiro for Attorney General, and drop it in. And on top of all that, the Wolf administration allowed the curing of ballots. So when you're in the Marine Corps and you voted absentee, you and I, when we mailed our ballots in, if you filled it out incorrectly, they were thrown out. And it was very clear on the ballots. If you fill this out incorrectly, it won't be counted. It's tossed. But you could take mail-in ballots now, and Democrat counties were authorized by the Wolf administration to correct those ballots that were incorrectly filled out. And these are all violations of law.
Let me ask you, because this is getting into Act 77, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so now you had said a lot of people that don't really know, they blame Republicans. And that's one thing you always hear when you hear about Act 77 is that a Republican legislature passed that. But the way Act 77 initially was drafted and passed, it was revised when it finally got to the governor, to the governor's desk to be signed, and then to the court is the ones that essentially allowed them to come in several days after they, lightened up on the signature verification. Now, let me ask, because I want to ask, I know you voted for Act 77 in 2019, correct?
Yeah. I think it was like summer or fall of 2019. I'd only been there a couple months when this came up, and it was pushed through by Republican leadership.
Right. Now, was it ever voted on again?
Oh, no, it went through the normal process, state committee in the House and Senate, and then to the floor in the House and Senate, and then to the governor. So let me lay out a few. So it's become a blame the Republican thing just because there's people running for office and they're willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get votes. And I'm tired of this game. I'm tired of working with people who lack honor and integrity. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm definitely not perfect here. But at least, on our side here, stop lying and putting out little memes that are just full of crap. There was some wins with Act 77 in its original form. One was taking away straight party voting, which would benefit the Republicans since we're a smaller party in Pennsylvania. I think in the next year or two that we're going to actually turn into a red state here with registration. They took away straight party voting, and the argument was there's people that will be more wise, instead of just clicking, Republican or Democrat, to actually, I know Doug Mastriano, I like him, and even though I'm a Democrat, I'm going to vote for him. And it worked. We won for the first time since the Korean War. We have a treasurer who's a real Republican. I don't count the lady in the 80s because she switched to the Democrat Party, midterm. Stacey Garrity, retired Army colonel as well. And she was told by the establishment she would not win. They did not back her with money, and she was on her own. She was outspent by the Democrat 10-1, an incumbent, by the way. And because there was straight party voting was gone, she was able to get elected, as well as the inspector general. And it was the first time in, I don't know, 30, 40 years we had a Republican inspector general, Tim DeFore. That's fantastic. Ironically, though, and tell me if I'm crazy, it's a bit fishy that Josh Shapiro got more votes than Joe Biden did. Interesting. Just to shore that up there. But the Texas case last, in 2020, I think that hit it on the head. And when I was talking to Donald Trump about that 2 years ago, I said, the Texas case is the one. All this other stuff is background noise. Paxton, the Attorney General in Texas, he got it right. He said election law was violated. The Constitution was violated in the United States by the rewriting of election law. This is where it went wrong, by the Democrat-led Pennsylvania State Supreme Court. Our justices are elected, not appointed. And 5 of the 7 are Democrats, and one's very radical. And so they rewrote election law, which is a constitutional violation. The U.S. Constitution says the manner and conduct of the elections are up to the legislative body. That's me. I'm a lawmaker. Governor Wolf's not, and the court's not. They enforce the law or see the constitutionality of the law, but they completely changed the law. And as a result of that, our election in 2020 was compromised.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Brian.
I had the honor of or the pleasure of interviewing AG Paxton a couple weeks ago out there in Texas, and that was definitely something I brought up, was just some appreciation for that lawsuit that he brought up back then. But what I wanted to talk about with Act 77 specifically was the fact that this was changed, unconstitutionally. But when you look at what happened before the election and then immediately following the election, the Supreme Court, before the election, the Trump campaign actually sued on Act 77, and they said, well, there's no injury yet. You haven't sustained any injury, so you don't have any standing to bring this case forward now. Then after, there was, I think it was Mike Jones. I'm not sure. Mike Jones, Sean Parnell, a couple other people brought another case about Act 77, and this case, they ruled on latches and said you waited too long. So here we are 2 years later, and they finally are saying, hey, yeah, this was actually unconstitutional. So where do we go from here? Are we going to have universal mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania in 2022?
Well, if I could just take a step back. So when I was talking to 45 about this December of 2020, his mind and conversation is always forward moving, so it's kind of hard to jump in sometimes. But this is one of the rare occasions I kind of interrupted. And I said, "Hey, Mr. President, this case is it." And all the things I just said to you, I said to him was, he's like, Doug, I know, but the U.S. Supreme Court, they don't have courage. They're not going to take it. They don't have courage. And the next day, he was right. They ruled on a technicality that the plaintiffs didn't have standing. And I'm like, I'm a state senator. I did amicus with that. I don't have standing in my own state. I mean, But because it was a hard case, I thought that was their job, though, to take these hard cases on. And we're flapping in the wind a bit constitutionally as a result of these unresolved issues here. Rule either way, but at least hear the case out. So anyway, the Commonwealth Court in Pennsylvania ruled a few weeks ago that the mail-in ballots as they exist now is not constitutional. And they actually did a deep dive on some of the verbiage in the Pennsylvania state constitution. And if you read it a certain way, it sure does look like you have to vote in person, the way it's written there. And, barring, certain extreme circumstances, such as you serving overseas, in the Marine Corps, obviously, and that would be an absentee ballot. Or you're sick or something, you can't. But the wild, wild west of, no excuse mail-in voting, as we have it in Pennsylvania, they said that doesn't stand. But that's great news. But the next court it goes to, and it's already been appealed by the Wolf administration, is the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court, the same court that made these not unconstitutional changes. So we know how they're going to rule. So in 2022, this year, yes, election law, unless the legislative body, no, there's nothing. Say they move, I have like 8 bills on election reform, all the stuff that needs to be done. I have it, co-prime with other senators or myself independently. all those will probably get vetoed. We should still run them, get Wolf on record. But okay, so what do I do in a general election? Okay, I win the primary in May, and now it's a general election. You know, and I'm going to face many of the same obstacles that we faced in 2020. But thank God we have Virginia as a model. You know, and they have many issues too. Maybe not as bad as PA, but there's issues there, and they overcame the cheating. They had 95% of the polling state, 95% of polling stations. They had Republicans in there monitoring as poll watchers. 95%. We need the same thing this November in Pennsylvania. They also had attorneys forward deployed. They didn't have the attorneys sitting around, you know, in an office. You know, apparently the attorneys were out and about, and, you know, kind of like a quick reaction force kind of thing, ready to go wherever there's a crisis. And then even this is a bit interesting, and this is not conspiracy, because obviously we do have evidence that some of these machines from certain companies have the capability to go online, which is not legal and definitely not ethical. Because if you have an online voting machine, can the votes be, you know, manipulated? Of course they can be. Anything online can be. Mm-hmm. And so the Republicans threatened they'd have like an electronic warfare capability monitoring the polling stations to detect, you know, activity on the net. I don't think that actually happened, but the threat of that with the Democrats who overplayed their hand in 2020 got them to be a little bit more careful. And so I think with that approach in Pennsylvania, we'll win in November.
Okay, so it sounds like to me you're very confident in the security of the people's vote in either for you or governor or whoever they decide to vote for. But I mean, obviously, you're wanting that to be you. Are you confident enough yourself to say to somebody who stares you in the face on the campaign trail and says, "Senator, I voted for President Donald Trump and my vote was stolen, and I don't want the same thing to happen to you. So I'm not either going to vote, or I'm going to vote for you, but I don't have confidence in that vote," because that's where we're at right now, Senator.
Yeah.
There's no person in this country that is in the midterm election in 2022 going to walk into that voting booth and not in the back of their mind or maybe at the forefront of their mind think, where is my vote going? Whether it's on an ES&S machine, a Dominion machine, a Hart machine, or any others, regardless of however many poll watchers we have that are Republicans or anything else. I mean, I agree with you from the Virginia standpoint that was a massive groundswell of Republicans that we had in there, and at least it kept people honest more so than we saw before. But we saw poll watchers in November, Senator, that were 60 feet away being put behind basically ropes and then videotaping themselves saying there is corruption going on here. They are not allowing us Republican poll watchers to watch these ballots be filled out. And this isn't now a general election where they're voting for one person and then the down ballot. This is every state basically fending for themselves for governorship, Congress, House of Representatives, and on down the line. So are you confident to tell that person that stares you in the face, yes, I am confident that your vote will matter in November?
Well, you know, and anything I say is from the heart. This is not politicking. I don't do politicking. I don't play games. I'm not a politician, and I don't like politics. If you don't vote in May and especially November, you're part of the problem. Period. If you're gonna fall for the Democrat narrative that's perpetuated by these pharisaical Republicans, you know, well, I'm not gonna go vote. You know, it's funny. I was in Delaware County a few months ago, over, you know, south of Philly, and there's one guy was kind of heckling me, and I said to him, it was about, you know, voting integrity, and I said, "Well, did you vote in November?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "You just need to shut up then, because you're part of the problem. If you're not going to vote, you don't have a right to complain." Yeah. So if you're gonna, okay. My Marine brother there sacrificed a lot for his country to serve in the Marine Corps, and many of our relatives served around the world. I think about Battle Bulge. My Uncle Joe was the only survivor of a Sherman tank trying to break through and relieve the 101st and the 10th Armored Division trapped in Bastogne. What they suffered for our country, and we're too lazy and have too many excuses to get off our butts and go downtown to vote. That's ridiculous. If you love your country, you're going to vote. Look, Pennsylvania has always had problems. I don't know that there are any. They are bad. I don't know that they're worse when we had the machine in Philadelphia in the 50s and 40s. I don't know it's any worse, you know, as it compared to that. But we're known for problems in Pennsylvania. The people of Virginia, they came out in overwhelming numbers, and they're able to overcome the cheating. There's a maxim in Pennsylvania that for a Republican to win statewide, you know, he or she needs 3 to 5% more voters to come out to overcome the cheating. Yeah, that's a fact, and that's a fact today as well. We have ways to shore up your vote. You know, after I'm governor here, every vote will be equal. You'll have an equal say and equal vote as everyone else who votes. Those who don't vote don't have a say. I mean, so it's up to them whether they want to vote or not. Republicans, don't you dare cop out. if you love your state and your country, if you're a patriot, if you care about your family and what the state's going to look like for your kids, you need to get out and vote. And tell others that you hear that, that are just too lazy to do that and demoralize. Okay, some might be genuine. A lot of cases, I just think people are just copping out.
Yeah.
And you think about what the price was paid. I represent Gettysburg, where a new birth of freedom was secured in July 1863, 50,000 casualties. And, they were fighting to save our union and also to set all men free, by the way, as well. I don't listen to the Southern narrative about that. And most people, I had not suffered or sacrificed as much as the men who served at Gettysburg. I mean, horrific, charging into canister fire and what have you. I mean, I can't imagine that. So, yes, there's problems. Can I say your vote is equal across the state? I can't say that right now, but I do know if we all show up and vote, we will win back our state. And it's as easy as that.
Amen.
Senator, this next question is more of a personal one. I'm actually just curious myself. You can choose to answer it or not, but I thought I'd have to ask because this road has been such a long road for you, and I'm just watching this from a 30,000-foot view has just been mind-boggling. It's been humbling. It's been frustrating. It's been exhilarating. It's been all the emotions. But I want to know from a personal standpoint, just for me, what was your relationship like with Senator Dush before you got removed from your chairmanship, and what has it been like since?
It was good before. I mean, we share a lot of values. We're both conservatives. I'm the one who invited him to the Arizona visit, and that was arranged, of course, by a mutual friend of ours. And I don't know what went wrong. I'm not going to talk too much about it here. Something went wrong, and it's always a bad sign when somebody's going to throw themselves into the arms of a rhino and support the effort of a rhino. So. Very disappointed in how all that played out. He was called out several times by Christina Bobb by things that he said, and I don't know what else to say about it here. We need to get our crap together, Republicans. Though sometimes I feel like we're like the redcoats, right? We tie our arms behind our backs and let the other side have all the advantages. Well, there's rules we have to abide by. Yeah, I get it, and I'm not saying do anything illegally, but let's act bold and courageous. In my first assignment, I was assigned to the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment in Nuremberg, Germany, and we were called the speed bump. If the 8th Guard Soviet Army attacked, they said we'd last about 45 minutes, but enough of us would die where the reinforcements would come. We'd be committed to defend Germany. But right before you got to our parade field, we're in these old German barracks from World War II, and they had a mirror so you could check yourself out, before you go into formation for inspection. And somebody. Probably some sergeant major, taped something on top, said, "Know your enemy," and you're looking at yourself. That's how I think that sometimes us Republicans act. We don't realize sometimes we're our own worst obstacle.
Colonel, let me kind of, I know we got to start wrapping up here. Let me kind of switch gears a little bit. I do have one last election question, and I'll leave that for the very end. But recently we've heard stories. I'm down in Florida, and we've had the same plight down here with these illegal planes showing up in the middle of the night and dropping people off in our state. What are you guys doing up in Pennsylvania to combat this? Is this something you guys are? I'm referring to these border drops where they're dropping off immigrants, illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants in the middle of the night under the cover of darkness. I know you guys have had some experience with that recently, correct?
Yeah, so there's what we call ghost flights from El Paso, Texas, direct to Scranton and direct to Lehigh Valley, Allentown. If I go online to try to book a flight to El Paso, I'll have 1 or 2 stops on the way. You ain't going to get no direct flights out of Pennsylvania, El Paso, Texas, unless there's these ghost flights. One of the ghost flights landed in Scranton. They had 120 packs, 120 personnel on board. 113 were minors. Okay, this is a little strange. This is a little odd. I of course, demanded answers from Governor Wolf, and he sent me a letter. I left it at my office. I could show you otherwise. It's up in Harrisburg. I said, have they been okay? Because we're told we have to screen ourselves. We have to get the jab. We have to mask up. So I said, have these individuals been screened for COVID? Have they been screened for any viruses for that matter? What's their final destination? What are they doing? Who's going to pay for them if they stay in Pennsylvania? Who's going to cover the property taxes for the increase of our school tax? And on and on and on. And he basically said, oh, they're just passing through. So a 1-page letter, but basically they're just passing through. I'm like, passing through to where? And obviously one of my colleagues has legislation I co-sponsored. It's a copy what DeSantis did. It said, all those that we that are stopped by the state police and to be put on buses and dropped off by Biden's house in Delaware. So I love it.
Let me just back up for a second, because you said something there that was really mind blowing. You said that there were 120 packs on this flight, and 113 of them were minors.
Yes.
So you have 7 adults.
Yep.
113 minors. Just doing quick math off the top of my head, that would mean about 15 children for each, about 16 or 17 children for each adult on that flight. That doesn't seem logical. Are they just dropping off unaccompanied minors in Pennsylvania?
You think about any trip in high school where you had chaperones, the ratio is a lot higher for adults than that, because you're going to have a lot of problems. And Wolf said in the letter, those minors will be dropped off into sponsors' houses. I'm like, what? Huh? Whose houses? None of it makes sense. Obviously, there's a population shift going on in America. Every state in America, thanks to Joe Biden and willing accomplices in these various states, such as Governor Wolf, where every state now is a border state. Texas might be a couple thousand miles away, but their problem's our problem here, and we really need to get our crap together. So,
I mean, Senator, that's human trafficking.
Yeah.
Let's call it what it is. That is human trafficking, and now you've got states like New York that are allowing illegals to vote in any election that is held within the state of New York, even in the general election. I mean, you're seeing legislation passed across the state, specifically in Wisconsin, that says anybody who through the ERIC system has potentially be a legal ballot recipient or even an illegal ballot recipient needs to have information within the voter roll system that's presented to the ERIC system. That system is employed within Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Where are we going with this?
Yeah, and our election system is also the SURE system as well, which has a lot of issues here. We're headed in a bad direction, and that's why look the difference one good governor can make. Look at Ron DeSantis there, and he's courageous, he's strong. Florida is extremely attractive. It already was a nice state, but now it's very attractive because he loves freedom and he loves his people, and he's not afraid of the media. He's not afraid to speak truth. But, many Republicans we see in leadership positions here, they're career politicians and they run for the foxhole when a shooting starts. And I'm glad he takes them on. Kristi Noem, I know there's some issues there, but for somebody who likes warm weather like me, to make South Dakota look like a good place to move to here is kind of jacked up. It shows you what a difference a good person can make. So choose wisely in these gubernatorial elections. Don't sit out the race. And in fact, if I could hit this one more time here, I didn't finish the thought on here. There's I get a lot of people across the state here from Philly to Erie. We my wife and I travel together on the campaign trail, and we just pack out the halls and usually have to turn people away. I mean, it's so humbling. We have a movement, RSBN, Right Side Broadcasting Network. They covered my announcement hearing, and Brian, who was covering it, he travels the nation doing these things. He said he's never seen anything like this before in any state level race, and so we're blessed. And the last thought here is, just don't say, "Oh, Doug, I'll vote for you." That's not enough. This is a grassroots movement. We have lots of opposition here. Volunteer to help me. Knock on doors. Tell your neighbors. And if you can, donate. And it's at doug4gov.com. So help us out if you can.
Thank you very much.
You're butchering it, Marcus. All right, Colonel, we're going to wrap up here, but I do want to get kind of a overview of where we're at right now, because we do have some sort of an investigation that may be happening in Fulton County, Pennsylvania. Is there anything you can talk to about that? I know you had said that they're not subpoenaing the physical paper ballots in that. This is just going to be machines. Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, so sadly, your question's broken up. If you can do that one more time.
In Fulton County, hold on, let me take this off. In Fulton County, Pennsylvania, we've got this court case that's going on. They're trying to stop the usage of not stop the usage, but stop the investigation of the machines. Is there any update on that? What it's going to entail? You said it's not going to entail the paper ballots. Is there any way that they can get that in there? Well, give us an update on Fulton County.
Yeah, so Fulton County is right next to me here, and actually, I asked the county commissioners there, who I'm close to do an audit last January of 2021. And like nobody knows about it there, and they had about 10,000 voters, and so it was pretty easy to do the audit. It wasn't as forensic as I think Arizona, which I hadn't been aware of yet. They hadn't even done that yet. But there was, I believe, 17 things on the subpoena. None of them are ballots. The ballots can still be subpoenaed and obviously be challenged in court. The way ahead for the Democrats, all this is really frozen in court right now. I think the Democrats are going to win by running out the clock in the end. They're really close to getting there. They just have to wait until August or September.
September
Yes,
3rd.
thank you, September. I should not do math in public, but anyway.
Do you guys have a state law in Pennsylvania? Sometimes states have a law that's a little bit longer than the federal law.
No, we just have the federal law that we abide by at this point.
Have you guys considered like putting any stay on the evidence or anything like that?
I mean, that might happen. I can actually do legislation that extends it.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Trying to get the Senate leadership to actually run it would be one thing. I could ask my colleagues in the House maybe to do mirror legislation to try to get around that.
Yeah.
Well,
I
God
think,
bless you, Colonel. Good luck.
Yeah, God bless you, Senator. I mean, what the work that you've done. I know that the grandstanding was hot and heavy the day after you went on Facebook to put up that video with Jake Corman trying to cut you off in between your interviews on Steve Bannon's show, and you set him straight. I think the information that was there was clear as day. You can listen to gaslighting, or you can listen to someone who's speaking the truth, and you know the difference. But yeah. I think this fight is for the American people, and especially we here that deal with the grassroots every day. The fight is real, and we're fighting for our kids to get rid of these masks. We're fighting with the Canadians who are fighting their vaccine mandates up there. I mean, what an amazing show that these Canadians have put on, and I hope they continue to stay there until Trudeau drops the mandates. We're fighting for everything that has happened since November 3rd, 2020. Because November 3rd, 2020 happened. And I think that's where when you had your Senate subcommittee hearings and when you were out front and you were trying to do the will of the people saw that. I mean, they weren't dumb. That's why you packed the House on your announcement. That's why you've been one of the number one candidates ever since then. I don't want you to lose that focus ever, because they're going to continue to dox you. They're going to continue to say, you're going to take down your information from Facebook and everything else. This is a fight. And I just don't, like you said, there's a bunch of lions that are dressed up like sheep walking around like cows. And we've got to remember who we are as lions and say, the Lord is our shepherd. We shall not want. We're going to go into that battlefield with him by our side, and there's nothing they can do to stop us.
Yeah. It says in John 8:36, if Jesus set you free, you're free indeed. And so our movement's been all about individual freedom. And it's funny, you come to my rallies and I'm a conservative Christian, but you'll see people there, who don't have lifestyles that are like mine. And I'll occasionally ask them, so, I know we differ considerably in our worldview. Why do you back somebody like me? And they're like, I know what you stand for. You stand for freedom, and you're going to let me live my life the way I want and not the way some governor or some other bureaucrat sees fit. And that's what's attractive about this campaign. So we're all about restoring freedom in Pennsylvania. We are blessed. This is a place in 1682 where William Penn arrived, and he spoke a prophecy that Pennsylvania would be the seat of the nation, and we would do what is just, right, and wise. That's ironic. Just a few years before he was given this land grant, he was in prison in England for his Christian faith. He didn't belong to the right church. And King Charles II said, William, I'll let you out if you just, have the right ideas and you join the right church. And he said, I'd rather die. Because he was faithful, God blessed him. He wanted Pennsylvania to be a light to the nation. He wanted it to be a place where people could walk freely and not walk in fear of going to jail for having a different idea politically or religiously. And, just a few years after his death, that prophecy was fulfilled in 1776 in Philadelphia, where the light of liberty was lit. Right down the road in Philadelphia. It's amazing. Anybody that's free around this nation or world, they have Pennsylvania to thank for that. And William Penn's dream, his vision of a place where it could be a place of refuge. That's why we have so many, incredible Amish here and other people who fled here in the 1700s for freedom. And then, of course, I mentioned before Gettysburg, our freedom, of course, was secured with a new birth of freedom in 1863, but a huge sacrifice. And of course, even on 9/11, Pennsylvania was there. We are the Keystone State. 2001, Flight 93 headed for the Capitol, and Todd Beamer and others got word that things were going cross-eyed and think the plane was probably not going to land safely. And they took the first strike against terrorists on 9/11, and his last words were, let's roll. So Pennsylvania and United States of America, it's time. Let's roll.
There we go. Not only is he a colonel, a senator, a future governor, but he's also a doctor of history, PhD in history. So that was a little trip right there. Colonel Mastriano, thank you so much. Marcus, sorry, I don't mean to jump on your toes there.
No way, man. We're co-hosts. That's what we do. We work well together. Senator, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your service, not only to this country as a senator, but also especially as a colonel and fighting for our freedoms. And you're continuing to do it today on the campaign trail. I wish you all the best of luck. Please go to the donate section at dougforgov.com. And yes, I'm going to say this for you, Senator, because I want people to donate, because there's no more super PACs in the grassroots. All right. This is $10 from 100,000 people that are going to get these people across the finish line. All right. Yeah. So I'm going directly right after this to donate myself. Wow. And I challenge anybody to double my donation coming up here that I'm going to have. Senator, any last words?
Telegram. Sorry.
Well, thank you. Since we've been on air, 3 donations have come in, equating to almost $200. So thank you for that. Thank you for people putting their money where their mouth is. We're going to take our state back, and it's going to send shockwaves across the nation, just as Ron DeSantis did, and just as Youngkin did in Virginia. It'll be far greater in Pennsylvania, because I believe we'll lead the light of restoring freedom to this nation right here in the Keystone State.
Hey, man, you're going to have me doing push-ups after this, Senator. I'm getting all jacked up.
Hi, sir.
All right, sir. Yes, sir. Go to my channel, everybody. If you haven't been there, exposure.locals.com. Visit my boy over here at cancon.locals.com. We're putting out information almost every day. At least we're trying. And Senator Mastriano, thank you for your time once again.
Thank you, gentlemen. God bless you guys.
God bless you. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next one.